Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and watched the stars drift by outside the main window. His ship Aurora's Edge moved slowly through space near the Kepler 442 system. This was supposed to be a simple job. Check some asteroids. Look for useful metals. File a report. Go Home. Jake had been doing missions like this for 8 years. He commanded a small crew of 3 other people. Lisa Grant was his pilot, and she could fly anything with engines. Tony Rivera kept all the machines working, and he never met a problem he could not fix. Dyer Amy Walsh studied alien life forms, but they had never found any real aliens before. The ship was not fancy, but it worked well. It had enough supplies for 6 months and weapons that could handle space pirates. Jake liked his job because it kept him away from Earth politics and let him see new places. Most days were boring, but that was fine with him. Amy looked up from her science station. She had been checking the asteroid readings for 2 hours. Her brown hair was tied back, and she wore the same blue uniform as everyone else on the ship. Jake thought she seemed worried about something. "Captain, there is something strange about asteroid cluster 7, she said. The metal readings do not make sense. There is way too much rare metal in one place." Lisa turned around in her pilot's seat. She had short blonde hair and always seemed ready for action. "Maybe we found a really good one this time. We could make enough money to buy a bigger ship." Tony laughed from his engineering station. He was older than the others and had gray hair. Or maybe someone already mined it and left the good stuff behind. That happens sometimes. Jake stood up and walked over to Amy's station. The computer screen showed numbers and charts that meant the asteroids had metals worth millions of credits. That seemed too good to be true. In space, when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "Take us closer, Lisa, but keep the engines ready to run," Jake said. "Amy, keep scanning. Tony, make sure our weapons work." The Aurora's Edge moved toward the asteroid cluster. As they got closer, Amy's readings became even more strange. There were metals that should not exist together in nature. There were also energy readings that made no sense. "Captain, I am picking up something big behind the largest asteroid," Lisa said. "It is really big, maybe 3 times the size of our ship." Jake felt his heart beat faster. Big unknown objects in space were usually bad news. They could be pirates or worse. "Put it on the main screen." The front window changed to show what was behind the asteroid. Jake heard Amy make a small sound of surprise. Tony stopped working and stared. Lisa said a bad word under her breath. Thought it was a ship, but unlike anything they had ever seen. The hull looked like it was made of crystal and metal mixed together. It had smooth curves that flowed like water. Lights moved along its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. "That is not human," Amy said quietly. "That is not any species in our database." Jake tried to stay calm, but his mind was racing. Real aliens were supposed to be just stories. The galaxy had many species, but humans had never met any that were truly alien. Most other species were similar to humans or animals from Earth. "Lisa, back us away slowly. Do not make any sudden moves," Jake said. "Amy, try to scan it, but do not use active sensors. Tony, get our weapons ready, but do not power them up yet." Before anyone could move, the alien ship began to turn toward them. It moved without any visible engines or thrusters. The crystal parts of its hull began to glow brighter. Then something impossible happened. A voice came through their communication system. It spoke perfect English with no accent. The voice was female and sounded calm and friendly. "Human vessel, please do not be afraid. I wish to speak with your captain." Jake looked at his crew. They all stared back at him with wide eyes. No one knew what to do. First contact with aliens. was supposed to involve diplomats and scientists and important people. It was not supposed to happen to asteroid miners in the middle of nowhere. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the ship Aurora's Edge," he said into his microphone. "Who am I speaking to?" The alien ship moved closer. Jake could see more details now. The crystal parts were not just decoration. They seemed to be part of how the ship worked. Energy flowed through them like blood through veins. "Captain Morrison, I am Queen Zara of the Valani Empire. I have been searching for humans for a very long time. May I come aboard your ship? I believe we have much to discuss." Amy grabbed Jake's arm. "A queen," she whispered. "We are talking to an alien queen." Jake's training told him to be careful. His instincts told him to run. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. This was the most important moment in human history, and it was happening to him. "Your Majesty, we would be honored to meet you," Jake said. "But our ship is very small and simple. Perhaps we could come to your ship instead." There was a pause. Then the alien queen spoke again, and Jake heard something in her voice that sounded almost like sadness. "Captain Morrison, my father often spoke of humans. He said you were brave and honest people. I hope he was right. Yes, please come aboard. I will lower my shields and open a docking port." The alien ship began to change shape. Parts of its hull moved apart to create an opening just the right size for the Aurora's Edge. Jake realized they were about to make history. He just hoped they would live to tell about it. Jake stood in the airlock wearing his best uniform. His hands shook a little as he checked his breathing mask one more time. Lisa and Tony wanted to come with him, but he said no. If something went wrong, he did not want to risk his whole crew. Amy had begged to come because she was the science officer, but Jake thought it was too dangerous. The airlock door opened, and Jake stepped into the alien ship. The first thing he noticed was that gravity worked normally. The second thing was that the walls seemed to be alive. They had a soft glow and moved slightly like they were breathing. The floor felt warm under his feet. Queen Zara was waiting for him in a large room that had no corners. Everything curved into everything else. She was tall with pale skin that seemed to glow from inside. Her hair was long and silver and moved even though there was no wind. Her eyes were purple, and when she looked at Jake, he felt like she could see into his soul. She wore a dress that looked like it was made of liquid starlight. It changed colors as she moved. She was beautiful, but in a way that made Jake feel small and young. This was clearly someone very important and very powerful. "Captain Morrison, welcome aboard the Starweaver," she said. Her voice was the same one he had heard on the radio, but now he could see her speak. Her lips moved, but somehow the words came from everywhere at once. "Thank you for trusting me enough to come here." Jake tried to remember his diplomatic training. "Your Majesty, it is an honor to meet you. I am sorry that our ship is not worthy of someone of your station." Queen Zara smiled, and Jake felt some of his fear go away. "Your ship is perfect, Captain. It reminds me of another human ship I knew about long ago. Please sit with me. I have much to tell you, and I am afraid some of it will be hard to believe." The room changed around them. Chairs grew out of the floor like plants. A table appeared between them with drinks that smelled like flowers. Jake sat down carefully. The chair was more comfortable than anything he had ever felt. "Captain, before I begin, I must ask you something important. Do you know a woman named Amy Walsh?" Jake almost dropped his drink. "She is my science officer. She is on my ship right now. How do you know her name?" Queen Zara's expression became sad. "I thought so. She has the same eyes as her father. Captain Morrison, 30 years ago, my father, Emperor Kale, was leading an exploration mission in deep space. We were studying a dying star when we were attacked by machines. Terrible machines that eat everything alive. The room around them began to change. The walls showed pictures like a movie, but Jake could feel that these were real memories. He saw alien ships that looked like metal insects swarming around the beautiful crystal ship. The insect ships were firing weapons that turned everything they touched into more machines. We were losing the battle. My father's ship was badly damaged, and many of our people were dead. Then we found a human ship drifting in space. It was damaged, and most of its crew was gone. Only one human was still alive. The pictures on the walls showed a small human ship. It looked like the ships that Earth had used 30 years ago for long-range exploration. Jake had seen pictures of those ships in history books. Most of them had been lost during the early days of human space travel. The human's name was Commander Pete Walsh. He was hurt, but he was still trying to fix his ship's weapons. When he saw our ships being attacked, he did something that saved us all. Jake watched as the walls showed Pete Walsh. He was a man in his 40s, with brown hair and determined eyes. Jake could see why Amy looked like him. Pete was working frantically at his ship's controls while explosions went off around him. What did he do? Jake asked. He rammed his ship into the largest machine ship. His ship was tiny compared to theirs, but he hit them at exactly the right spot. The explosion destroyed their command ship, and the other machines fled. Pete Walsh saved the Vellani Empire, and he did not even know who we were. Queen Zara touched the table, and new pictures appeared. These showed Pete Walsh on the alien ship. He looked confused, but not afraid. Aliens were working to heal his injuries, while he tried to communicate with them. We brought him aboard and healed him. At first, we could not talk to each other, but Pete was very smart. He learned our language quickly, and we learned his. He stayed with us for almost a year, while we tried to find a way to get him home. Jake saw pictures of Pete working with alien engineers. He was showing them things about human technology and learning about their machines. In some pictures, he was laughing with alien crew members. In others, he looked homesick and sad. Pete taught us many things about humans. He showed us how you think differently than we do. We Vellani are very organized and logical. We plan everything carefully and follow rules. But Pete could look at a problem and find solutions that made no sense to us, but worked perfectly. The pictures showed Pete designing new weapons and tactics. He was drawing diagrams that mixed human and alien technology. Queen Zara explained that Pete's ideas had helped them fight off the machine attacks several more times. When we finally found a way to get Pete home, my father made him promise something. If the Vellani ever needed help from humans, he would make sure Earth remembered its friends. Pete agreed, and we gave him coordinates to find us again. But Amy told me her father died in a shuttle accident just after he got back to Earth. Jake said she never knew what happened to him during his missing year. Queen Zara nodded sadly. Pete tried to tell Earth's leaders about us, but they did not believe him. They thought space had driven him crazy. He was planning to come back to us when he died. The secret died with him. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Why are you telling me this now? Why were you looking for humans? The room darkened and the pictures on the walls became frightening. Jake saw huge fleets of machine ships. They were bigger and more advanced than the ones from 30 years ago. They moved through space like a plague, eating everything in their path. The machines have returned Captain Morrison. We call them devourers because that is what they do. They consume all organic life and turn it into more machines. They have grown stronger since Pete helped us defeat them before. Queen Zara stood up and walked to the wall. When she touched it, Jake could see a map of local space. Red dots showed where the machines had attacked. There were already dozens of them, and they were moving toward human space. My people are strong, and our technologies advanced, but we cannot stop them. They learn from every attack and adapt. Our logical tactics do not work because they copy everything we do and make it better. Jake understood what she was saying, and it scared him. You need humans because we are unpredictable. Yes, Captain. Pete showed us that humans can think in ways that no machine could copy. You can be creative and chaotic when you need to be. That is why I've been searching for humans. My father always said that if the Devourers returned, we would need human help to stop them. Jake looked at the map and saw how close the red dots were to Earth. How long do we have? 6 months before they reach your outer colonies. Maybe less if they move faster than we expect. Jake felt the weight of the entire human race on his shoulders. He was just an asteroid miner, but somehow he had become humanity's representative in the most important conversation in history. He thought about Amy waiting on his ship and wondered what Pete Walsh would want him to do. What kind of help do you need? Jake asked. Queen Zara smiled, and for the first time since he met her, Jake saw hope in her purple eyes. Jake returned to his ship with his head spinning from everything Queen Zara had told him. His crew was waiting in the main room, looking worried and excited at the same time. Tony had been checking every system on the ship 3 times. Lisa kept looking out the window at the alien vessel. Amy was reading every piece of data their sensors had collected. Captain, what happened over there? Amy asked before Jake could even sit down. The readings from their ship are impossible. Their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours. Jake looked at his crew and wondered how to explain what he had learned. Amy, I need to ask you about your father. Did he ever mention anything strange about his last mission before he died? Amy's face changed. She looked confused and a little hurt. Why are you asking about my father? What does he have to do with any of this? Please just answer the question. Did he ever say anything about meeting aliens or finding something unusual? Amy was quiet for a moment. Then she walked to her personal storage locker and pulled out a small data pad. After he died, I kept his personal logs. Most of them are normal mission reports, but some of them are weird. He talks about things that do not make sense. I always thought maybe the stress of space travel had affected his mind. She handed Jake the data pad. He scrolled through the files and found exactly what Queen Zara had described. Pete Walsh had written detailed reports about alien technology and battle tactics. He had drawn pictures of crystal ships and machine enemies. Most people would think these were fantasies, but Jake now knew they were real. Amy, your father, was not crazy. He really did meet aliens, and everything in these logs is true. The alien queen I just spoke to knew him personally. He saved their entire species from destruction. Lisa stood up so fast her chair fell over. Are you serious? Amy's dad was like a first contact hero? More than that, Jake said. He made a promise to help them if they ever needed it. Now they need our help, and they are calling in that promise. Jake told them everything Queen Zara had shared with him. He described the Devourers and their advance toward human space. He explained how the aliens needed human creativity to defeat an enemy that could adapt to any logical strategy. When he finished talking, the room was completely silent. Tony was the first to speak. So let me understand this. Killer robots are coming to eat everyone, and we are the only ones who can stop them because we are crazy enough to confuse them? That is basically right, Jake said. Amy was reading through her father's logs again with new understanding. Look at this entry from just before he died. He says the Metal Eaters will return in 30 years, and humans must be ready. He even drew battle plans. She showed them the datapad. Pete Walsh had designed weapons and tactics that mixed human and alien technology. Some of his ideas looked impossible, but Jake was starting to think impossible was exactly what they needed. There is one big problem, Jake said. If we go back to Earth and try to convince the government, they will never believe us. It will take months just to get a meeting with someone important. By then the Devourers will already be attacking our colonies. Lisa sat back down and put her head in her hands. So what do? We are just 4 people on a mining ship. Queen Zara's voice came through their communication system. Captain Morrison, may I speak with you again? I believe I can help with your problem. A few minutes later, Queen Zara appeared on their main screen as a hologram. She looked around at Jake's crew with interest. When she saw Amy, her expression became very sad and happy at the same time. You must be Amy Walsh. You look exactly like your father when he was young. He would be very proud of you. Amy started crying. She had spent her whole life thinking her father was a failure who died because he made mistakes. Now she learned he was a hero who had saved an entire alien civilization. Your Majesty, what did you mean about helping with our problem? Jake asked. Captain, your government will not believe you, and you do not have time to convince them. But there are other humans who might listen. Over the past 30 years, my people have had contact with a few other humans. Most of them were explorers or traders who promised to keep our existence secret. Queen Zara's hologram changed to show a star map with several locations marked. These humans have experience with alien contact, and they understand how dangerous the galaxy can be. Some of them have been preparing for something like this. Jake studied the map. The marked locations were scattered across human space, but they were all places where independent ships operated. These were not government vessels, but private explorers and merchants who worked on the edges of civilization. Do you think they would help us fight the Devourers? Amy asked. Some of them will, Queen Zara said. But we cannot wait for a large fleet. The Devourers are moving faster than I expected. My scouts report they have consumed 3 more star systems in the past week. We must act soon or it will be too late. Tony looked at the technical data Queen Zara was sharing about the Devourers. These things adapt to whatever attacks them. How are we supposed to fight something that learns from every battle? By being unpredictable, Queen Zara said. Your father understood this, Amy. The key is to attack in ways that make no sense to a logical mind. The Devourers expect their enemies to use efficient tactics and smart strategies. They cannot adapt to chaos and randomness. Jake started to understand what she meant. You need us to be the chaos while your fleet provides the main attack. Exactly, Captain. My people will engage them directly with our strongest weapons. Meanwhile, human ships will attack randomly with no clear pattern. This will overload their adaptation systems and create weaknesses my fleet can exploit. Lisa laughed, but it was not a happy sound. So the plan is to fly around randomly shooting things and hoping we confuse the robots to death. It sounds crazy, but that might be exactly why it will work, Amy said. She was looking at her father's notes again. He wrote that the best way to fight a smart enemy is to be stupid in a smart way. Queen Zara smiled. Pete Walsh said exactly the same thing. Captain Morrison, I know this is much to ask of you and your crew. You signed up to mine asteroids, not fight in a galactic war. But without human help, both our species will be destroyed. Jake looked at his crew. Tony was scared but determined. Lisa looked ready for a fight. Amy was holding her father's datapad like it was the most important thing in the universe. They were just 4 people, but they might be humanity's only hope. Your Majesty, we will help you, Jake said. But we will need better weapons and shields if we are going to survive long enough to confuse anyone. That can be arranged, Captain. My engineers have been working on modifications that combine our technology with human designs. Pete Walsh's notes were very helpful in developing them. Over the next several hours, Queen Zara's people shared technical specifications with Tony. The modifications would make their ship faster and tougher, but also more unpredictable. Some of the changes went against everything humans knew about ship design, but that was exactly the point. As Jake watched his crew work to prepare for the coming battle, he thought about Pete Walsh. A single human had saved an alien empire. Now his daughter would help save both their species. Sometimes the most important moments in history happen to ordinary people in the middle of nowhere. Jake just hoped they would be ready when the time came. Jake stood on the bridge of his modified ship and looked at the display showing their new allies. In 3 weeks, they had managed to gather a small fleet of human vessels willing to fight the Devourers. It was not the organized military force he would have preferred, but it might be exactly what they needed. The first ship to answer their call belonged to Captain Ben Rodriguez. His vessel Lucky Strike was technically a cargo hauler, but everyone knew Ben smuggled goods across the galaxy. His ship was fast and heavily armed because his business required both speed and the ability to fight off pirates. Ben was a big man, with a beard who laughed too much and told stories that were probably not true. I knew this day would come eventually, Ben had said when Jake contacted him. I met some of Queen Zara's people 5 years ago when my ship broke down near their Rye. Space. They warned me that bad things were coming, and I should be ready. Plus, they paid me very well to keep quiet about meeting them. The second ship was commanded by Captain Kate Phillips. Her research vessel New Horizon was supposed to be studying space phenomena, but Kate had been secretly investigating alien technology for years. She was a former military officer who left Earth's Navy because she thought they were not prepared for real alien contact. The government has been ignoring signs of advanced alien activity for decades, Kate told Jake during their first meeting. I have been collecting evidence and preparing for first contact. I never expected it to be a war, but I have weapons and shields that most people think are impossible. The biggest surprise was Admiral Roy Campbell. He commanded the heavy cruiser Iron Will, which was officially listed as decommissioned, but was actually part of the secret Earth Defense Project. Roy was an old man with gray hair who had been preparing for this exact scenario for 15 years. I met the Vailani during a classified mission in 2510. Roy explained to the group. They told me about the Devourers and made me promise to be ready if they ever returned. I have been building an unofficial defense force ever since. My ship and crew are volunteers who know the truth about what is coming. Their small fleet now had 6 ships total. Jake's Aurora's Edge had been completely rebuilt with Vailani technology. The modifications made it faster than any human ship and gave it weapons that could punch holes in asteroids. Tony had worked with alien engineers to install systems that made no sense but worked perfectly. Ben's Lucky Strike had been equipped with stealth technology that let it appear and disappear like a ghost. Kate's New Horizon carried scanning equipment that could track enemies across entire star systems. Roy's Iron Will was a mobile fortress with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. They also had 2 more ships that had joined them in the past. Weak. Captain Dave Wilson commanded the mining vessel Rock Crusher, which now carried explosive charges powerful enough to crack planets. Captain Sue Parker led the fast courier ship Quicksilver, which had been modified to carry a new type of missile that Queen Zara scientists had developed. Amy had become their tactical coordinator. She studied her father's notes and worked with Queen Zara to understand how the Devourers thought and fought. Her job was to figure out the most confusing and illogical attack patterns possible. The key is to never do the same thing twice, Amy explained during their strategy meeting. Every attack must be completely different from the last one. We need to be random, but we also need to be effective. It is like trying to solve a puzzle while someone keeps changing the pieces. Lisa had been promoted to Fleet Pilot Coordinator. She worked with the other ship pilots to practice the crazy maneuvers they would need to perform. Some of their training exercises looked more like elaborate dances than military tactics. Normal space combat follows rules, Lisa told Jake while they watched Ben's ship spin through a series of impossible turns. Ships attack from good positions and retreat when they are damaged. We are going to attack from terrible positions and retreat when we are winning. It will either work perfectly or get us all killed. Tony was now the chief engineer for their entire fleet. He had learned more about alien technology in 3 weeks than human scientists had learned in decades. The Vailani had shared knowledge that would normally take centuries to develop. Their technology does not just work differently than ours, Tony explained to the other engineers. It thinks differently. Our machines do what we tell them to do. Their machines understand what we want them to do and figure out how to do it better. It is like having a conversation with your tools. Queen Zara visited their fleet regularly to check on their progress. Each time she came, she brought more information about the approaching Devourers. The news was never good. The enemy fleet was larger than expected and moving faster than anyone had hoped. My scouts report the Devourers have consumed 12 star systems, Queen Zara told the assembled captains during their final briefing. They now have enough resources to build ships faster than we can destroy them. This battle will be our only chance to stop them before they become unstoppable. Roy Campbell studied the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had fought in real wars. Your Majesty, what kind of numbers are we looking at? How many enemy ships will we face? The Devourer fleet consists of approximately 10,000 vessels of various sizes. My fleet has 3,000 ships. Your group has 6 ships. The human captains looked at each other. Ben started laughing. 6 ships against 10,000. I have faced worse odds, but I cannot remember when. The numbers do not tell the whole story, Queen Zara said. One Devourer command ship controls hundreds of smaller vessels. If we can destroy the command ships, the rest will be helpless. That is where your ships will be most valuable. Amy had been studying the Devourer fleet composition. According to my father's notes, they use a distributed command system. Each command ship controls a section of the fleet, but they all communicate with each other. If we can confuse their communication network, we might be able to turn their coordination against them. Kate nodded. Like jamming a radio frequency, but instead of blocking their signals, we fill the channel with nonsense. Exactly, Queen Zara said. But the nonsense must be the right kind of nonsense. It must be unpredictable enough to overload their adaptation algorithms, but coordinated enough to create the openings my fleet needs. Jake looked around at his fellow captains. They were pirates and researchers and rebels who had spent their careers operating outside the normal rules. Now they were being asked to save 2 civilizations by being even more chaotic than usual. When do we begin? Jake asked. The Devourer fleet will reach the Nexus sector in 48 hours. That is where we will make our stand. It is a region where 3 star systems meet, so there will be room for both fleets to maneuver. My ships are already moving into position. Sue Parker raised her hand like a student in school. Your Majesty, what happens if we lose? What happens to Earth and your people? Queen Zara was quiet for a long moment. If we lose here, the Devourers will consume my empire within 6 months. Earth will fall within a year after that. This is not just a battle, Captain Parker. This is the last battle. As the meeting ended, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 6 months ago, he had been a simple asteroid miner, worried about paying for ship repairs. Now he was part of the most important military operation in galactic history. He thought about Pete Walsh and the promise he had made 30 years ago. One human had saved the Vailani Empire with courage and creativity. Now it was time to see if Pete's daughter and her friends could do it again. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. In 2 days, they would either save the galaxy or die trying. Either way, it would be the most important 2 days in human history. The Nexus sector was filled with ships preparing for the largest space battle in recorded history. Jake watched from his command chair as Queen Zara's fleet took positions near the 3 dying stars that gave the region its name. The Vailani ships were beautiful, even in war formation. Their crystal hulls caught starlight and threw it back in patterns that looked like art. The human ships looked tiny compared to the alien vessels, but Jake was not worried about size anymore. Over the past month, he had learned that in space combat, being small and fast was often better than being big and strong. His fleet of 6 ships could move and change direction faster than anything else in the sector. Amy sat at her tactical station, running final checks on their battle plan. She had spent days studying devourer behavior patterns and creating attack sequences that made no logical sense. Her father's notes had been the key to understanding how to fight an enemy that learned from every battle. All ships report ready. Captain, Lisa said from her pilot station. The modifications are working perfectly. I have never flown anything this responsive before. Tony looked up from his engineering console. All systems are green. The Vailani technology has integrated, with our equipment better than I expected. We have more power and speed than any human ship in history. Jake opened a communication channel to his fellow captains. This is Aurora's Edge to all human vessels. Everyone ready for the chaos? Ben Rodriguez laughed over the radio. Lucky Strike ready to confuse some robots, Captain. My ship has never been this fast or this heavily armed. Kate Phillips checked in next. New Horizon standing by. Our sensors are tracking the enemy fleet. They will be here in 10 minutes. Admiral Roy Campbell's voice was calm and professional. Iron will ready for combat. All weapons charged and crew at battle stations. Dave Wilson sounded nervous, but determined. Rock Crusher ready. I have enough explosives on board to crack a moon, so let us hope we get to use them. Sue Parker was the last to report. Quicksilver ready to deliver some very special surprises. The new missiles are loaded, and targeting systems are online. Queen Zara's voice came through on a private channel. Captain Morrison, my fleet is in position. Remember that your job is not to win the battle, but to create confusion. Stay alive and keep the devourers guessing. My ships will do the rest. Understood, Your Majesty. Human fleet beginning random deployment pattern. Jake's ships spread out across the sector in positions that made no tactical sense. Ben's Lucky Strike hid behind a small asteroid. Kate's New Horizon positioned itself between 2 Vailani battleships. Roy's Iron Will took up station near one of the dying stars where radiation would interfere with sensors. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly when Queen Zara's scouts had predicted. Jake had seen pictures and sensor readings, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The enemy ships looked like an infection spreading across space. They were dark metal shapes that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Some were as big as cities, while others were small and fast like metal insects. Enemy fleet entering the sector, Amy reported. I count over 9,000 vessels. They are forming attack formations. The Devourer ships moved with perfect coordination. Each vessel knew exactly where to go and what to do. Their formation was mathematically perfect, with no wasted movement or energy. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Queen Zara's fleet responded with their own formation. The crystal ships began to glow as their weapons charged. Energy flowed between vessels like lightning, connecting the entire fleet into one massive weapon system. When the first shots were fired, the space between the fleets turned into a storm of light and destruction. Jake had never seen anything like the opening exchange. Vailani energy beams cut through space in perfect lines, while Devourer weapons fired streams of metal that turned into clouds of smaller projectiles. Ships on both sides began to die within the first minute of combat. "Human fleet begin harassment protocol," Jake ordered. "Remember the plan. Hit them where they do not expect it, and retreat when they start to adapt." Amy had calculated the first attack sequence. Target Cluster 7 with Pattern Alpha. 3 ships attacking from different directions with 30-second intervals. Ben's Lucky Strike appeared from behind its asteroid and fired at a group of medium-sized Devourer ships. His weapons were not powerful enough to destroy them, but they created enough damage to get their attention. Before the enemy could respond, Ben's ship disappeared again. Kate's New Horizon attacked from the opposite direction, using completely different weapons. Her experimental beam weapons cut through enemy shields like they were not there. The Devourers began to adapt their defenses, but then Sue's Quicksilver attacked from above, using the new missiles that exploded in ways the enemy had never seen before. The 3 attacks happened so close together that the Devourers could not process the different tactics fast enough. Their adaptation systems became confused and started making mistakes. Several enemy ships began firing at empty space or turning in the wrong directions. "It is working," Amy shouted. "Their coordination is breaking down in Sector 7. Queen Zara's ships are moving to exploit the opening." Veilani battleships poured concentrated fire into the confused Devourer formation. Without proper coordination, the enemy ships could not support each other effectively. Within minutes, an entire section of the Devourer fleet had been destroyed, but the enemy learned quickly. The remaining Devourer ships began to spread out and operate more independently. They stopped trying to maintain perfect formations and started hunting the human ships with small groups of fast attack vessels. "They are adapting to our tactics," Lisa said, as she threw their ship into a series of impossible turns to avoid enemy fire. "We need to change the plan." Amy was already working on new attack patterns. Pattern Beta. All ships attack the same target, but use completely different approach vectors and weapon types. Make them think we are 6 different fleets. The human ships regrouped and attacked. A Devourer command vessel. Jake's Aurora's Edge came in fast and low-firing kinetic weapons. Roy's Iron Will attacked from long range with energy beams. Dave's Rock Crusher appeared from behind the target and dropped explosive charges like an ancient bomber. The combined attack destroyed the command ship, but Jake realized they were taking too much damage. Ben's Lucky Strike had lost its stealth. System. Kate's New Horizon was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Sue's Quicksilver was flying on emergency power. "We cannot keep this up much longer," Roy Campbell said over the radio. "My ship can take more punishment than the others, but even the Iron Will has limits." Jake looked at the tactical display and saw that Queen Zara's fleet was also suffering heavy losses. The Veilani ships were more advanced than the Devourers, but they were badly outnumbered. Unless something changed, soon both fleets would be destroyed. Amy was reading her father's notes again when she suddenly looked up with excitement. "I found something." Dad wrote about a theoretical attack that could overload their entire command network, but it would require one ship to sacrifice itself. "What kind of attack?" Jake asked. "A direct assault on their primary command vessel using massive data overload. We would need to broadcast every piece of human cultural information we have directly into their adaptation systems. Music and art and poetry and stories. Things that make no logical sense, but represent how humans really think." Jake understood. Immediately. Cultural data would be completely outside their programming. They would not know how to process it. But the ship making the attack would have to get very close to the command vessel, Amy continued. Close enough that they could not escape the explosion when the enemy ship overloaded. The communication channel was quiet as every captain realized what Amy was suggesting. Someone would have to die to save both fleets. "I will do it," Jake said. "This was my mission from the beginning." No captain Roy Campbell interrupted. "The Iron Will is the toughest ship we have. I am also the oldest. Let me finish what I started 15 years ago." Before anyone could argue, Jake saw something on his sensors that changed everything. "Wait, I have an idea that might let us all survive. Amy, can we modify the attack to use a smaller ship as a delivery system?" "What do you mean?" Jake was already working at his console. "What if we load all our cultural data into one of the escape pods and program it to broadcast everything when it gets close to the command ship? The pod would be destroyed, but the ship launching it could escape." Amy ran the calculations quickly. "It might work, but we would need to get very close to launch the pod. And we would need to keep their attention focused on us while the pod approached the target." Jake looked at the battle raging around them. Queen Zara's fleet was fighting bravely, but they were losing. In another hour, the Devourers would break through their lines and head for both Earth and the Velani home worlds. "All ships concentrate on the enemy command vessel," Jake ordered. "We are going to ram every piece of human culture we have down their electronic throats and hope they choke." On it, the 6 human ships formed up and began their final attack. They flew directly toward the largest Devourer vessel, broadcasting music and poetry and stories at maximum power. Every song ever written and every book ever published flowed from there. Transmitters like a river of human thought. The enemy ship tried to adapt to the cultural data, but there was no pattern to find. Human creativity was pure chaos wrapped in emotion and dreams. The Devourer systems began to overload as they tried to process information that had no logical structure. Jake launched the escape pod when they were close enough to see the enemy ship's hull with their eyes. The pod streaked toward its target, carrying the compressed essence of human civilization. When it reached the command vessel, it began broadcasting everything at once. The result was spectacular. The Devourer command ship exploded in a chain reaction that spread to every vessel connected to its network. Within minutes, the entire enemy fleet was drifting helplessly as their coordination systems failed completely. Queen Zara's ships finished the job with precise energy strikes that turned the disabled Devourers into scrap metal. The battle was over, and somehow the good guys had won. Jake slumped in his command chair as the adrenaline faded. His ship was badly damaged, and his crew was exhausted, but they were alive. More importantly, they had saved both their species from extinction. Queen Zara's voice came through their communications with joy and relief. "Captain Morrison, you have honored your species and fulfilled Pete Walsh's promise. The Velani Empire will remember this day forever." As Jake looked out at the debris field that had once been the Devourer fleet, he thought about Amy's father and the promise he had made 30 years ago. One human's courage had saved an alien empire. Now his daughter and her friends had saved the galaxy. Jake smiled as he realized that Pete Walsh would have been proud of what they accomplished. Sometimes the most important victories came from the most unlikely heroes doing impossible things in the middle of nowhere. The stars looked different now that humans knew. They were not alone. They looked like the beginning of something new instead of the end of something old. Jake was ready to see what came next.